You are listening to You've Got 5 Options show,
where every week Marta and Anna abandon their 5 children, 2 partners, and 1 cat to make a show especially for you.
An artist, a challenge, a bullshit, a wisdom, and a surprise. Tune in and feel the magic of 5.
I think it was really nice to share a story, what kind of effect doing free flow writing might have.
Yep.
And I just wanted to bring the last point, the 5th point that we talked about, because one of the participants of the group asked me I keep on taking my phone all the time. So I'm already feeling overwhelmed, and then I keep on just getting my phone and checking stuff and just feel more and more overwhelmed. And she asked me what to do with that. And then I said, well, a simple detox will do. I do it a couple of times a year, where I don't use my phone or switch off internet, delete social media apps for a week. I get completely free from that. I just don't do it for a few days, and after a few days I'm clear and I'm just free to use it when I really want it. I don't have this tick of just taking my phone and checking stuff all the time, and it has an amazing effect. I think being addicted to checking Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever that is that you are used to doing, or playing a game on your phone, that is really something that adds on to our general overwhelm and escape mechanisms of being present.
Yeah, I might or may not play a game recently, and maybe I should do something about it. No, but I only reserve it for special times, like in the evening. But very, very good points, Marta. Dennis, have you ever made a social media detox?
Years back, yes. But that's 10 years ago or something.
Okay. Whoa, you were really a pioneer at some things, you know. You made the exercise like years ago, and you made a detox years ago.
And I had really long beard before it was fashionable, yeah.
Okay, you are really a mindfulness pioneer, even if you don't feel mindful.
I'm a trendsetter, yes.
How humble. But that's really nice. I don't remember if I made the detox, but I know that for some people it's super difficult. And even if they will try to, put the uninstall the application like Facebook from mobile, then they just install it back after a couple of hours because they cannot do it. I actually know a person who wanted to have a detox from Facebook. You know what she did? She uninstalled it on her mobile, and she asked her boyfriend to change her Facebook password. So she doesn't know the password, only he knows it. And they agreed that she will only check it on the computer, and he's the password holder. She doesn't know her own password to Facebook. So that's actually quite, we can say, quite funny, but it works.
That's addiction.
That's quite a big sign that detox is wildly needed. Yeah. But okay, guys, being mindful of the time. Let's go for the bullshit.
Say what? Boo, 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 boo. It's bullshit of the week.
Yes, bullshit. So when I was preparing for that show, I was like, there must be some bullshit around mindfulness. I'm sure I can find something. And I have found a very long article on The Guardian by Ronald Purser, who gets that the mindful conspiracy, an article around mindful conspiracy capitalist spirituality, something like that.
Mindful conspiracy capitalists
spirituality.
Oh my God. Okay.
The link will be there. The link will be there in the show notes or at the5options.com. It's an interesting article, well written, very much in depth. However, so what Ronald Purser is trying to say there is that mindfulness is sold as a force that can help us cope with the ravages of capitalism. But with its inward focus, mindfulness meditation may be the enemy of activism. So what he writes in his article is that mindfulness has gone mainstream, with celebrity endorsement from Oprah Winfrey and Goldie Hawn. Meditation coaches, monks, and neuroscientists went to Davos to impart the finer points to CEOs attending the World Economic Forum. The founders of the mindfulness movement have grown evangelical, professing that its hybrid of science and meditative discipline has the potential to ignite a universal or global renaissance. The inventor of mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, John Kabat-Zinn, has bigger ambitions than conquering stress. Mindfulness, he proclaims, may actually be the only promise the species and the planet have for making it through the next couple of hundreds years. So we have two interesting concepts. We have on one hand a concept where some people claim that mindfulness can save the planet. And on the other hand, we have the concept that the mindfulness is actually the enemy of activism. So meaning that if we go inwards too much, we may actually stop seeing what is actually happening in the world. And instead of acting and doing something to change the situation in the world, we are going too much inwards. And by meditation, we are trying to heal ourselves and people around. And I am very curious for your opinions, guys. Which of those two concepts is a bullshit in your eyes, or maybe none of them? They are quite,
Yeah, this is very, very interesting because as I see, Mr. John Kabat-Zinn claims that meditation can save the world, and Mr. Ronald Purser, who wrote the article, claims that actually can make you passive towards everything around. And I actually have to say that both of those statements might be true depending on the circumstances. Because as I do believe that if people would be more mindful, more spiritually developed or developed personally, or being able to see beyond their own bullshit and be more grounded, centered, loving, the world would automatically change into a better and loving and peaceful place. That is something I truly believe in. However, as it was mentioned, mindfulness, I think it also becomes lately a dirty word. Oprah is doing this, Goldie Hawn is doing this, so people are following trends mindlessly. So I think there might be a mindless attempt to follow the trend of mindfulness, meaning it's hip, it's cool, it's new age, meditation, Chinese bells. I will sit and drink green tea, look at the sunrise and meditate, and I will calm myself from everything. It can be just another escapism, like for other people it's the gym or alcohol or drugs. It's just another form of covering up what's in you by trying to find this fake peace. So I think that there is a danger here. And another thing, I think I lately wrote a little piece, and Marta, it made you wonder that it's time to pull our heads out of our asses. Meaning, I think that sometimes focusing too much on yourself could indeed blur you for the circumstances around what is happening in the world, and making us convinced that the only thing that you have to do in order to change the world is to change yourself, and then not to get involved with any bad things that are happening around, only yourself, might indeed slightly make us sleepy and passive towards evil in the world.
Thank you. A very good overview of the two concepts that may be bullshit or may be true, depending on...
I think it depends.
Yeah,
it really
on
depends.
A person, on circumstances and so on. Dennis, what do you think about it?
Well, if I have to choose, I think the notion that kind of a level of self-absorption would be able to save the world is the most bullshit. I don't believe that any of the two is absolutely true. But yeah, being self-absorbed, being mindful of everything, yeah, that's the enemy of activism, because sometimes activism is putting yourself aside for something that's obviously the greater good.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting that you tie mindfulness or being mindful with self-absorption. Can you elaborate a little bit?
I think I'm a little biased because I'm allergic to buzzwords in a sense, and mindful is a buzzword that it's a sticker that's put on everything, like sustainable, and we can all agree that sustainable is good, but if it's put on everything, it loses its meaning. The same way with mindful. If everything is mindful, it doesn't mean anything, because then it's just a sticker. It's just a word that we put in front of completely mundane actions like eating. And so if it's put on everything, it doesn't have a meaning anymore.
Yeah, I have to say that I know exactly what you mean, because I believe it becomes a dirty word. I think that mindful as a concept is great, but
Definitely.
I think many people are just, taking it as a trend, that it's there. You see an Instagram model who looks like she used 10 filters and maybe some plastic surgery, sitting in some weird sexy position on the balcony, drinking a smoothie, saying mindful morning. And I'm like, no, no,
Instagram
darling.
morning.
Yes, Instagram. No, darling, that's not mindful. That's that. And of course, then it's also a link where you can buy the smoothie or something, So I think the mindful is being used. The word is being used into selling things and so on. And it's sad, because many words are sustainable the same, or for instance, storytelling, personal branding. 2 years ago, that was something new. Now everyone is using this, you have to be a storyteller. You have to do the personal branding. And if you use it on everything, it starts to lose the meaning.
Is that the point of the author? That the conspiracy thing, that the spiritual capitalist, blah, 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 is that his point? That it's used to sell?
He makes a lot of points. It's quite a long article, but that's one of the points. But the one that he's actually, I think, trying to... Of course, he says that mindfulness is not bad in of itself. No. That, of course, it helps reduce stress and, these kind of things. But maybe when it becomes a goal, in a company, that we have a goal to reduce stress with people, so we, allow mindful rooms or, activities. And
you have to be there a mandatory 1 hour per week,
So,
de-stress.
Yeah, but I think that the biggest threat that he has seen is more about, I think, something that could be called some sort of spiritual bypass. When you are getting so much inwards and you are getting on some sort of spiritual high, kind of thing, and then you stop actually involving yourself with challenges or problems that are here in the world.
Yeah.
And you are therefore passing over some pain, suffering of other people and so on, because you are on some sort of bypass. But now being mindful of the time, I know you don't like the word that much. However, let us go for the wisdom.
A super wise wisdom of the week. Wisdom.
So this time for Wisdom of the Week, I have decided to read a story. And that story comes from a book that Mr. Mark Manson, also a friend of the show, has written inside his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
He doesn't know he's a friend of the show.
No, he doesn't know he's a friend of the show, just like Joe Dispenza doesn't know that Marta is coming to Cancun, that he's inviting me over and over again to his retreats.
You realize that once we become famous, those people might actually hear those things.
I think they would be happy to know that they have been friends of the show or my personal friends. And I already have people who, one of my friends, Tina, she just wrote me a thank you note for introducing her to Joe Dispenza. Not personally,
Marta,
but to his work.
Don't introduce Joe to others. Do you want other people in Cancun with you and with Joe?
Yes, I do. I think he's doing some interesting stuff, and it's worthwhile digging into or exploring his work.
I believe you.
Okay, the story.
Yes.
About 2,500 years ago, in the Himalayan foothills of present-day Nepal, there lived in a great palace a king who was going to have a son. For this son, the king had a particularly grand idea. He would make the child's life perfect. The child would never know a moment of suffering. Every need, every desire would be accounted for at all times. The king built high walls around the palace that prevented the prince from knowing the outside world. He spoiled the child, lavishing him with food and gifts, surrounding him with servants who catered to his every whim. And just as planned, the child grew up ignorant of the routine cruelties of human existence. All of the prince's childhood went on like this. But despite the endless luxury and opulence, the prince became kind of a pissed-off young man. Soon every experience felt empty and valueless. The problem was that no matter what his father gave him, it never seemed enough, never meant anything. So late one night, the prince snuck out of the palace to see what was beyond its walls. He had a servant drive him through the local village, and what he saw horrified him. For the first time in his life, the prince saw human suffering. He saw sick people, old people, homeless people, people in pain, even people dying. The prince returned to the palace and found himself in a sort of existential crisis. Not knowing how to process what he'd seen, he got all emo about everything and complained a lot. And as it is so typical of young men, the prince ended up blaming his father for the very things his father had tried to do for him. It was the riches, the prince thought, that had made him so miserable, that had made life seem so meaningless. He decided to run away. But the prince was more like his father than he knew. He had grand ideas too. He wouldn't just run away. He would give up his royalty, his family, and all of his possessions, and live in the streets sleeping in dirt like an animal. There he would starve himself, torture himself, and beg for scraps of food from strangers for the rest of his life. The next night, the prince snuck out of the palace again, this time never to return. For years he lived as a bum, a discarded and forgotten remnant of society. And as planned, the prince suffered greatly. He suffered through disease, hunger, pain, loneliness, and decay. He confronted the brink of death itself, often limited to eating a single nut each day. A few years went by, then a few more, and then nothing happened. The prince began to notice that his life of suffering wasn't all he was cracked up to be. It wasn't bringing him the insight that he had desired. It wasn't revealing any deeper mystery of the world or its ultimate purpose. In fact, the prince came to know what the rest of us have always kind of known, that suffering totally sucks. And it's not necessarily that meaningful either. As with being rich, there is no value in suffering when it's done without purpose. And soon the prince came to the conclusion that his grand idea, like his father's, was in fact a terrible idea, and he should probably go do something else instead. Totally confused, the prince cleaned himself up and went and found a big tree near a river. He decided that he would sit under that tree and not get up until he came up with another grand idea. As the legend goes, the confused prince sat under the tree for 49 days. We won't delve into the biological viability of sitting in the same spot for 49 days. But let's just say that in that time, the prince came to a number of profound realizations. One of those realizations was this, that life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of their riches. The poor suffer because of their poverty. People without a family suffer because they have no family. People with a family suffer because of their family. People who pursue worldly pleasures suffer because of their worldly pleasures. People who abstain from worldly pleasures suffer because of their abstention. This isn't to say that all suffering is equal. Some suffering is certainly more painful than other suffering, but we all must suffer nonetheless. Years later, the prince would build his own philosophy and share it with the world, and this would be its first and central tenet. The pain and loss are inevitable, and we should let go of trying to resist them. The prince would later become known as the Buddha. And in case you haven't heard of him, he was kind of a big deal. There is a premise that underlies a lot of our assumptions and beliefs. The premise is that happiness is algorithmic, that it can be worked for and earned and achieved as if it were getting accepted to law school or building a really complicated Lego set. If I achieve X, then I will be happy. If I look like Y, then I can be happy. If I can be with a person like Z, then I can be happy. The premise, though, is the problem. Happiness is not a solvable equation. Dissatisfaction and unease are inherent parts of human nature and are necessary components to creating consistent happiness.
I don't know if it catch my clapping. Very beautiful story, Marta, with a very interesting Mark Manson spin on Buddha legend. Very nice.
Yeah, I really love the story, and I love the way Mark Manson writes, always giving a little bit of humor into every story, bringing some lightness. I'm actually quite enjoying his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So to all of you guys who have enjoyed the story of Buddha, you are very welcome to read Mark Manson's book. And being mindful of time, I will leave you with that wisdom with no further comment. And we will go to the left field.
G. From the left field.
So guys, today I have prepared from the left field, and I wanted to do something that has absolutely nothing to do with mindfulness. I wanted to really surprise you. So Marta, especially for you, I have chosen a question that actually bothers me. I want to really answer for at least like 5 or 6 days since the YouTube video I saw, which was titled, "Why is Nickelback the most hated band in the entire universe?" And guys, that is something that I know of due to cultural references. I don't think Nickelback is that hated here back in Europe, but in US it is. Dennis, it is? Okay, but in US at least, and as Dennis says in Europe, this is actually considered to be the most hated band ever. And I have to say I'm super surprised, because I don't think that they did anything that horrible to be that hated. But I will have a little bit of an introduction, and that with a little MP3. I will tell you guys that I found out that in November 2016, cops in Canada actually decided to come up with a very interesting punishment for all the drunk drivers. They have announced on their Facebook page that whoever will be found drink driving will be escorted to the police station and will have to listen to Nickelback album in a car. That was to add to a punishment. There is more things. For instance, in November 2008, Nickelback got completely booed and there were rocks flying at them in Portugal on a concert. In November 2011, Aux Labs developed Nickelback block application to block all mentions of Nickelback from your internet experience. App go completely viral and is used by millions of people and spreads over Facebook like a fungus. Then later that month, nearly 56,000 football fans signed a petition to prevent Nickelback from playing the halftime show between Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers. The band actually played only one song. Then in Alberta, Canada, Nickelback refuses to allow broadcast over the charity performance at Alberta Float 8, drawing the ire of thousands of fans. Media starts to declare them the worst band in the world. Well, if you are playing on a charity festival and you are saying, okay, you cannot stream it, our part is not streamed for anyone, then it's kind of, yeah. And then in January in 2016, Donald Trump removes someone carrying a Trump likes Nickelback sign in the audience. The troll also attend other Republican rallies. So actually Donald Trump removed a guy who was holding Trump likes Nickelback. And now the cherry on the top, I have prepared you a little bit of a clip from a video promo by Mark Zuckerberg when he was introducing Jarvis, which is artificial intelligence, something like Alexa, but for Facebook. And this is a bit of from the clip.
And Jarvis can play all of our favorite music. Hey, play us some good Nickelback songs.
I'm sorry, Mark. I'm afraid I can't do that. There are no good Nickelback songs.
Good. That was actually a test. Okay, how about just play some songs that our whole family likes?
So guys, I was trying to really solve this puzzle. How come a band that is already more than 20 years on the market, and now I would like to say sold more than 50 million records, and until this day fills all the stadiums where they play, they have a huge fan base actually, is in the same time considered the absolutely worst and the most hated band in the entire universe? Dennis, you have an opinion because, guys, I have sent that clip to Dennis to play today and it was called Nickelback, and I got an answer in the email from Dennis. Nickelback? Question mark and some emoticon, and I was like, heh, heh, heh. Dennis, do you know why Nickelback is the most hated band in the universe?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
No, it's fashionable. That's all I know.
Okay,
it's fashionable to hate on them.
Do you hate Nickelback?
Not at all. Before it was fashionable to hate them, I actually liked some of the songs on the radio, and then all of a sudden it was the worst band in the world. And okay, but they've made good music. They filled stadiums. They've sold 50 million.
Yeah, actually, I was
Quantity
also...
doesn't measure quality. I know that.
Of course. No, but I actually looked into it, and believe it or not, there was a student in Finland who wrote, I think it was a research. It was a research at university why Nickelback is the most hated band in the world, and she was trying to solve the puzzle. And I think the thing that comes out the most, it's a mix of social media that has exploded somewhere around where Nickelback actually came out, plus the frontman Chad Kroeger, who is simply unlikable, plus it's cool to hate Nickelback. It became a trend. We have 1 minute only. Okay, and at the end I will just tell you that apparently every single Nickelback song sounds the same. The only thing you have to do is to change the lyrics. But I would say that applies to Britney Spears, that applies to many pop stars. So guys, my verdict is it was cool to hate Nickelback, but it's not so cool anymore. Give those guys a break.
I agree.
Yeah.
You are listening to You've Got 5 Options show,
where every week Marta and Anna abandon their 5 children, 2 partners and 1 cat to make a show especially for you.
An artist, a challenge, a bullshit, a wisdom, and a surprise. Tune in and feel the magic of 5.